Spirit Switchboard, airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3, New Orleans. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Spirit Switchboard. I'm your host, Kerrilynn Shellhorn, and you are joining us live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7. Today, we are welcoming back Grant Evans, and you may have seen Grant on Haunted Hospitals. He is a paramedic that's been involved with the Ontario Paranormal Society since 2018 and is currently the co-director for the team. So thank you for joining us again.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's so fun. It's fun connecting with somebody who thinks similar, enjoys talking about paranormal things. And I had this list, and I knew that I wanted you to come back on and go through this list with me of paranormal things, not just, just to have a discussion. Is it paranormal? How can we make it explainable? And when is it what the heck? Because I don't know if you get a lot of people that send you evidence of things that they've caught, and you end up in this, position of having to very gently go, it may not actually be paranormal. And it's kind of a hard place to be in.
Yeah, it can be. Usually, as an investigator, we ask people to provide us with evidence, anything they've captured to corroborate their story. So there's a lot of times we'll get things that people claim they're seeing, and then we see them. We're like, I don't really know what you're seeing here, because I absolutely do not see anything. Like, I had one of the strangest ones of many was someone claimed that they could see faces and hands appearing from underneath their skin. And the pictures they sent was just the person's back. There was nothing protruding or pushing through. So that kind of going along with perhaps maybe a fuller assessment of that person and their medical background might tell you something about what's going on with that person, as opposed to something paranormal, right? So
and that's part of it. And maybe people don't realize that either. There's the time of day. Had you been awake for 48 hours? Do you take medication for anything? And it's not to be intrusive. It's to make sure that you have the whole story in order to get it. And that some of those experiences need to be repeated more than once so that you can try to have some sort of plausible explanation, for it.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, you survived October. I want to talk about, just because we're at the beginning of November. I always say November 1st, I'm like, I survived October. You survived October. October is such a crazy month. But I think for me, it really goes from October to like the second week of January, because people, may not realize, like, the haunted stories continue through Christmas. Like, Christmas has a lot of haunted ghost stories attached to it as well too. So I find we move right from October into like the energy of Christmas. It stays, that thinning of the veil stays for me until like after the new year. But how did you fare through October?
We were really busy. We ran charitable tours for local museums every weekend the entire month. So we were incredibly busy, on top of trying to stay up to our clients and keep up with them and making connections that way, and taking new clients too. So we love October. It's fun, but it's the busiest month of the year for us. So a little bit afterwards, we can take a breath and catch up, and it feels nice. But yeah, like I said, that energy doesn't necessarily fade. It's but I would say the general public maybe is less interested. You get those. A lot of people are fans, right? They love everything
Yeah.
spooky, and Halloween's spooky month, right? Everyone wants everything spooky. And as soon as that's over, there's a little bit of interest waning, I find, but it doesn't mean our
Yeah.
cases go down. It just we're not getting
Nope.
as many requests, but we're still getting them. So I
No.
can
And
testify, Julie.
yeah, we also have Donna and Catherine saying hello as well too. Donna is saying hello from Delaware. That's awesome. Thank you for joining us, everyone. I think that spooky for sure. People are wanting the spooky, and they don't necessarily realize that investigations aren't always spooky from start to finish. That's their expectations and what the reality are two separate things.
For sure. Yeah. The television really condenses your expectations from like a weekend perhaps into like an hour or less.
Yeah.
So um, we always joke as investigators, we say a lot of times we're just spending time hanging out talking to ourselves in the dark.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
we don't always have things flying off shelves and all those wild things happening, but
No.
from my experience, we usually find those wild things after in the evidence review. Like, I can't believe we missed all those things. Like, we have all these audio captures and whatnot. So
But I think
yeah,
that
it's fantastic.
sorry.
Let's go ahead. It's okay.
Oh, I was just gonna say Catherine Johnson saying hello from Ireland.
Hi,
So
Catherine. Thanks for
I
joining.
found I found that when I had a community programming television show with Rogers, and that's what I found too. Like an hour and a half session was whittled down to a 12-minute clip. So you're seeing 12 minutes out of like an hour and a half. So even like in investigations, that's what ends up happening. What they're doing on TV could be days worth, but it's taken down. So it appears like there's a lot happening, and I think that's why, everyone laughs at me, but I always focus on the snacks. What are we bringing for snacks? Because we're going to need the snacks. I'm the snack queen when it comes to investigations, because I know we're going to need it. And I know that sometimes it's out of boredom because you're just kind of setting things up and then you're waiting. You're just,
Yeah,
yeah.
and the coffee. Coffee's a big thing for our team. We love to have coffee runs to keep us up all night, and
Yeah.
it's funny too, like you're saying, like just setting up stuff. We find too when we're not even paying attention, we'll capture a lot of evidence. Like when you're just having that casual conversation with like
Yeah.
one of your colleagues, and all of a sudden in an audio recording you hear someone else talking. You're like, where'd that come from, right?
Yeah.
It's not always like you must jump when I tell you to jump, or you must answer my questions right away.
No.
It's the spontaneous answers a lot of the time too, which is very fun.
Yeah, and it's fun, and you don't recognize it, and you don't hear it until you're doing the reviews, and you don't like. I always wonder: is it because you are in those non-thinking moments, so the people in spirit are participating, or they have? Is it residual? Is it intelligence where they're having their own conversation? Like, there's so many ways for that to unfold, right?
For sure.
Hi, Sandra. Thank you for joining us. And the more you go to places too, I think they warm up to you.
Yeah,
So
I'd have
like
to agree with that for sure. Like
that they
they
bring
had when we do our one night our tour we do every Halloween for the Homer Watson Gallery in Kitchener. The first few times we found we weren't getting a lot of activity, and then the more and more we went, the more activity we were getting. It's almost like the spirits recognized us, which was a really cool thing, and a theory that I would like to try in multiple locations. I hope if the opportunity arises to see if that is an actual thing. Just like
well, it's I I feel they kind of check things out just like kids in the playground, right? Is this somebody that I'd want to play with on the playground? Is it somebody I want to ignore? And I feel they can pick up on our energies as much as we're picking up on them. So are they wanting to engage or choose not to? And I think when they check us out and see if it's a jive or not, you get more or less, depending on if they're wanting to do that engagement.
For sure, yeah. It's something that I think holds merit, and obviously in the field of paranormal research, we want to be able to research theories and come up with new ideas, and I think that's something that a lot of teams could benefit from um, looking into. As an example, like if you were to say like the big infamous locations like Penn State and a lot of the asylums that are paranormal
Mm.
hotspots, like how many teams have gone in there and investigated? Is the activity continuing because they've kind of broken through that plane, or is this just always there? Like, is there something more to what's going on other than just people running in and being scared, right?
Right. And what their intentions are. And do they want to? Like, do they
Yeah.
want to be engaging all the time too? I have brought home haunted dolls, these apparent haunted dolls, and but then nothing's happened. And I mean, I had watched videos before I had brought them home and stuff. So then like I talk to them. So I'll say, "Good morning, girls," and I'll leave the office and say, "Good night, girls." And like my granddaughter comes in and she waves at them. She says, "Good morning," and she, but I don't poke at them. Like I've not really put equipment up. I've not pushed them. So, I think about that too. Do they not want to be the entertainment monkeys for people? Do they so they just they're if there is spirits there, they're just hanging out and they're content to be left alone. Um, you know, there's that too. If you've been
Yeah.
the entertainment monkey for a long time, and sometimes it's the energies that are attached. Like I know um things may feel uh frenetic or aggressive, but it's not necessarily that spirit's intention. It's because they've been trying in subtle ways to get somebody's attention because they're wanting help or support. So they have to get that attention in a bigger way, and not necessarily that they're
Mhm.
aggressive. Like there's so many different ways of looking at all of it. And we need to be open-minded for that.
Yeah, definitely. I've also read that perhaps the items themselves aren't necessarily haunted. It's just a spirit that uses that item to
Mm,
communicate to you through. So
yeah.
there's
I
lots
buy
of
into
theories
that.
on that, like, right?
Yeah.
If you take like Annabelle, one of the most infamous haunted dolls ever, right? Um, is it that demonic force that the Warrens suggested was? Is it actually possessing the doll, or was it using the doll to gain favor in the case so that they would give it permission to reside with them and interact with them? Um,
Well,
I've
and
seen,
then
yep.
you have
So
everyone collectively putting that energy into it. So creating that into something itself as well too,
yeah,
right? So we're all manifesting
you're
it.
turning it. Yeah, you're so, and then so then the consideration is that dangerous. We're creating these battery opportunities. We're plugging these items into the charger of museums and haunted artifacts, and we're hyping it up, and we're creating an infamous story. Does that create the haunting? Does that create that object to become so infamous it becomes haunted, where it might not have been before at all?
So
Interesting. That interests me a lot. So
me too. And it's actually when I was making this list for today, when I was wanting to talk about paranormal, explainable, or what the heck, one of the things I wrote down as a possibility for why things happen was that power of suggestion, right? The power of suggestion. And if you're planting people at night in a dark space, you're heightened already. And if you've planted the seed to the story, they're naturally going to seek those experiences or feel like that's happening. So, you know, I don't know. Thoughts? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, my thoughts are there's something called bias, right? Everyone has biases, like subconscious bias or intentional biases. Like I might not like spicy food, or I might not like garlic. Well, I'm automatically going to say any food that has garlic in it's terrible, right? That's a bias, or a terrible example of a bias, right? And a lot of people in the paranormal field, we have something called confirmation bias. We always want to confirm our biases because that's what we believe. So if I believe this location or this item is haunted, I'm going to find ways through pareidolia, or I'm going to add up things that might be completely circumstantial or spontaneous and say, yes, that's because of this, and connect the dots when there might not be a roadmap there at all. That's your confirmation bias. So when you're even looking at investigations and evidence, you have to remove yourself from that, like, I believe this exists. I know it exists based on my experience or whatnot. I have to completely remove that and say, every time I'm looking at it from a blank slate. Otherwise, you're going to not be neutral. You're not going to give that person that
Yeah.
fair evaluation, right? So I always preach that to people too, like, and that goes even to like how you're brought up as a child, like your biases religiously. Like if you grew up in a certain
Mhm.
form of religion, anytime you experience something, you may automatically assume that that's a supernatural thing because that's how you grew up, and that's your biases. Um, but like I said, through pareidolia, we look for things to confirm our bias. We like to try and make things happen and try to make that puzzle fit our own personal beliefs that may not actually be there in the first place.
Well, our brain looks for those familiar patterns, right? It's looking for things that feel familiar, like faces in mirrors and trees and clouds and windows. That
Yeah,
happens a lot. The pictures of windows happen. I get sent a lot of pictures
yeah,
of windows with faces in them, but it's
yeah.
not
That, and I
necessarily a
remember
face.
like as a child, you'd sit outside in the summer, stare at the clouds, and this cloud looks like this cloud looks like this. Well, is that cloud really a unicorn? Well, no. We're putting meaning to things because they have similar shapes and stuff,
Yeah. And
and it
it's
triggers that memory.
so when could looking like scrying, you're looking in a mirror for images to come up. So there's a difference between what you're seeing in your mind's eye and then what you're actually seeing in the mirror. So are there times, like, I haven't seen a picture yet where I said that where I would feel something is paranormal in a mirror or a window. I just haven't, but I know that I've had experiences scrying, um, like in a psychomantium room. So it was mirrors on all
Mm.
sides. So I definitely had some experiences happening there, but orbs were happening at the same time too. Like it was just, there was a lot of stuff happening. But other than that, I have not seen anything. So have you? When was it really,
We
like, how
have
would you tell if it's paranormal
um,
in a mirror?
it's hard because we live in a day and age where photos can be edited quite easily. Um, so I have
I'm a
had a few
Polaroid girl.
pictures. Yeah,
I
that's
have
good.
Polaroid. I
You
take
can't
Polaroid
help it
camera
then.
with me. You can't. You can't.
No,
I've got a couple of really neat shadow figure ones and some
that's
orbs in the
awesome.
Polaroids. Like, yeah, it's a gross amount of money on film.
Oh yeah,
But
that's to say you pay for it in film, but um,
yeah, it's worth it.
yeah, we've
Sorry, I
had a
interrupted
few
you.
as a team. That's okay. We've had a few as a team where we had one. We're in the basement of a downtown in a small town where the downtown corridor, the basement went across all the shops downtown, and there's multiple buildings in southern Ontario, and um, our team was down there and they're just cleaning up, I believe, and they're taking some pictures with a handheld camera, and they actually caught what looked like a person in the mirror when no one was there, and it was, I believe it was like a man with like a beard, and like no
Mm.
one on our team has a full beard, and so there's no way to explain, and obviously you're snapping things, you might not be paying attention, and on review you look back, you're like, wait a minute, there's something there, oh my gosh, and it just gives you that extra creep. But
Yeah.
and I've also had, I had one client a few years ago that was, she said when she was taking pictures outside of her house, um, before they even bought the house, it was a really, really old house. Um, and the upstairs window actually had a person look like a suit jacket and wearing like a gas mask. It was really, really weird, really strange. Like, didn't, it was so, it was one of those what the heck moments, right? Like, this doesn't fit. Like,
Yeah.
and the house was completely empty. So, like, unless someone broke in and was trying to play a prank on them when they were trying to buy the house to scare them off from buying the house, it just doesn't make sense why that would be there, and it wasn't edited or anything, so I don't have an explanation to why that
Right.
happened in that photo. But
So that
I
lands in the
think
what the
there's,
heck though, because you can't 100% say it's paranormal when you don't have all the others like information behind it, right?
for
Would it
sure,
land?
and it's good, it's always good to, when you get those window pictures or mirrors, you're trying to reproduce it, and the key is
Hmm.
reproduce, right?
Yeah.
So you're looking at, okay, where's the angle of this picture taken? Was it cloudy outside? Was it clear skies? There's so many things. Was it daytime? Was it nighttime? What could have been reflecting in that mirror? Was it just someone driving by in their car, and the reflection was the passenger as they drove by?
Yeah. Or if it's
Possibly,
cold and their
right?
breath coming out, you know? Like
Yeah,
there's
that too.
there's just lots
Uh,
to consider. Um, I just had a memory too. I had a woman take. She set up the room all black, so the curtains, the window was covered, lights are off, and she got me to stand holding a shadow box. Um, so I don't. I think the glass was still in it. It was an empty shadow box that you could put stuff in, but it was empty. And then she snapped pictures directly at me, but she had said to think of the people that we wanted to show up in it. And so I was thinking Archangel Michael. I was thinking about babies, and then I was thinking about my great grandfather. And I never even thought about setting that picture up to show people today, but I'll send it to you later for you to look at. There's a
sure.
picture of a man that looks exactly like my great grandfather. When you put a picture of my great grandfather and the image that showed up in this picture that she took, you can see the big, almost like handlebar mustache. You can see the shape of a face. You can see like the glasses. It looks exactly side by side when I was in this dark room. So, I mean, was it my thoughts? Was it really him showing up? Is it pareidolia? Like it lands in the what the heck, but it's super interesting because when you see the picture, and the picture that I have of him is a newspaper article picture. So that's
Oh
the
wow,
image that showed up on the picture that she took. Which is kind of crazy. It
that's
was
wild. Did
crazy.
she use like a special type of camera or anything, that you
Nope,
aware of,
just like
or?
those, I think, and this was 10 years ago, so it was just like a regular digital camera, nothing extra special about it at all. No
Wow.
night vision, anything, no no extra lens. It was just she's like, "Let's try." I'm like, "Okay." And we closed up the room and I stood with the shadow box and she took a couple pictures and she said, "Think about who you want to show up." And that's who I thought of because he died long before I was born. So I don't really have any the only interactions I have with him are through spirit. Anyway, I'll send you the picture after. I'll
Wow.
remember. Maybe I'll post it on my social media too so people can see it. Um, okay. What else was okay, let's talk about orbs. Let's move right to orbs. Let's talk about orbs.
The
Paranormal,
dreaded orbs.
the dreaded orbs. But there's lots to learn. That's kind of how I look at all of it. I feel like a little baby every day, like a little kid that's still learning. Doesn't matter how long I'm doing any of this, like there's so much to learn. I feel like I don't know anything. I mean, I know some stuff, but there's always something new to learn. And that's kind of how I approach all of it. Even with the orbs, like there's
For
lots
sure,
to still learn.
there's so much. When you go down into spirituality, it's a rabbit hole, right? I tell everyone it's a rabbit
Mhm.
hole. As soon as you find something interesting, like, okay, well,
Yeah.
what else? Well, what else? And then you just keep digging, and there's no bottom. You just keep going. You
Yeah.
can't dig and find the bottom. There's no, like, the endless pursuit.
Yeah.
But
And it's
with
arrogant
orbs
to
and all
think that
these,
you know everything, to me.
100%, yeah,
Yeah.
for
But
sure.
with,
And as we progress doing research and investigation, we're looking at, you have to also almost become an expert with the equipment. I would suggest, like, it's one thing to take a
yeah.
picture and then you capture an orb, but do you understand why the orb is there? Like, is there something within the device you're using where that's a natural phenomenon, or automatically we have that bias that it's a spirit, right? We're talking about biases again,
Yeah.
because
No,
we want to believe, right? We want
I
to believe
don't.
there's spirits there. Like,
And I talk to
most of
dead
us,
people
it's
for a living. And I'm like, nope, it's got to be something else first. And then I will say that it is. I'm so left brain for doing what I do. Like, anyway.
that's good, and that's an approach I love for people to have. But 90% of that population, we get constant pictures of people saying there's orbs, there's orbs, there's orbs, it's got to be a ghost. But there's a lot of explanations why that orb is there, and it's not, it's very randomly, that's not even the right word, sorry, brain fart.
That's okay.
It's very seldom that that orb is actually a spirit. So we're lucky enough that we do get sent these things, and if you wanted to queue up um, when we can kind of talk about it, we do have a few examples. So this is what I would say is a rod, and this is a photography phenomenon or camera phenomenon that a lot of people say this has to be a spirit. This was a client sent these, kind of wondering our explanation as a team, saying, "What is this? My camera's captured this." Um, if you look at that, you say, "Okay, well, there's a linear pattern. There's round spots along it. What could that be? Could that be a ghost trying to rip through a portal, entering your garage to come and live at your house? Maybe. Very unlikely. But when you're looking at this, this is a very natural phenomenon, and you have to consider, one, the equipment it's being captured on. So there's a thing called like frames per second, or like a latency. All of our cameras emit a light source, especially our security home cameras, and then it takes time for that reflection to go back to the device to be captured. And if there's a slow frame rate or shutter speed or delay in that signal, you end up with these things that look like blurs or a connected line. This is actually a great example of a bug. And what
Yeah.
it's doing is, when you're seeing these
Yeah.
round spots, you actually, that's the bug flapping its wings. And the line is the movement pattern, and those round spots is the bug flapping. And there's that slow frame rate that's actually blending all of those moments in time together into one capture. Not a ghost.
And not a ghost.
So this one is the exact same spot, but now you're looking at it, it looks completely different. Well, is this one a ghost? No, it's not a
No.
ghost. Sorry.
Yeah.
Same kind of thing. So here's, I did find this online, and I'm sorry I didn't get the link, but we can always post the link later. But this is a great explanation I found online that I've used many times to help educate people. These are the explanation why you get this particular type of phenomenon, and it's a moving bug moving across the camera, the slow frame rate. It's slower than the beating wings. They're moving really, really quick. And if you were able to slow it down, you'd get that kind of pattern where it almost looks like a bird instead of a blended line. But on playback, they're all blended at the very bottom where it shows you.
That's a great explanation. Like visual, because not everyone, like some people need the visual in order to see and compare to what they've had, right? So you have
For sure they do.
we have those two other um, pictures as well, right? The oh, hi Howie. Howie's saying
Hi,
Grant.
Howie.
Yes, yeah. Thank you for bringing examples to the floor. So we'll just call up, if we could, Laura Lee, the two photos, exactly those ones.
So I'm not, this was, I am on a few uh, great paranormal haunted Facebook groups. If you're a fan, there's tons of them out there. An individual had posted this photo asking for their people's thoughts on it, and I'm not a photographer. I didn't go to school for photography, so I can only relay what I've learned and what I've been taught or educated from other people. And what you see here is a green orb. Um, from the photographer's standpoint, what I understand is a green orb is always a solar flare. It's the light or a flare, a light flare coming from a source, and that's coming towards your camera based on how you're angled with your camera itself. And then that becomes that green colored orb, and that orb would change position in that situation. This one was one right after, but this orb looks different. This kind of looks like a disco ball, right?
Yeah, that's
Kind
odd.
of, or the Death Star if you like Star
It
Wars. I like
does
Star
look like the
Wars.
Death Star.
So
Yes.
this one was explained as cell phones. When cell phones take pictures, they're a grid-like structure. The light that's emitted is created in a grid pattern, and when that comes back, it creates these orbs that are very patterned like this. So this isn't this is another example of a solar flare, but perhaps from a cell phone versus another type of camera. So you get to see that clearly, that grid-like pattern.
Yeah.
Fascinating,
And
right? So,
it's super fascinating. And moisture and dust have similar, like I know someone who kept sending me these outdoor pictures from their security cameras, but like it's just moisture. There was hundreds and hundreds of these circles, these orbs, and it didn't matter how I tried to frame the conversation. They just wanted to stick with it. And I'm like, how many dead folks do you think are hanging out your place? Because like it's hundreds.
oh yeah, yeah.
But that's really where they
I
wanted to stay.
had a funny story like that too. I had years ago. I was in the pursuit of trying to get a few clergy folk uh, to help me with clients, and it's very hard to do. It's very
Hmm.
hard to get support from organized religious leaders, but they're very happy to share their experiences with us,
Yeah.
me and my partner at the time. And he was showing me film after like picture after picture of a missions trip that they had been on in Africa, I believe. And he's like, "Oh my God, look at all these spirits are everywhere. Like we could just feel the energy. This like everyone was haunted or afflicted, and like the orbs. Look, the evidence is in the orbs." And me and my partner were just looking at them, and we're like, "Well, this this building is a dirt floor, and you
Yeah.
have many people crowded, very excited to be there, dancing, moving around the aisles. You're kicking up tons of dirt. That's not spirits. That's dirt and dust. Like same thing. You're not getting thousands of spirits in a tent. Like um, the most
Mm-mm.
obvious and the easiest explanation for that is dust, and that's the dust orbs. Um, Another quick thing I wanted to touch on is when you have like a DSLR camera, like a more of a professional camera, the difference in the solar flares from then is it's kind of curved or rounded, um, as opposed to like an orb. And it's the same phenomenon, just the lens, the shape of the lens is different. So that's why you're getting the different light anomalies in those devices. So if you're to kind of compare, and that goes to if you're using these pieces of equipment, the more you know about that piece of equipment, that expertise will show through the evidence you capture. We love having on our team like someone who's a photographer because they can point out these things immediately, and we're not
Yeah.
like having to chase down experts later. Um, so if you do have a team or you're part of a team, educate yourself if you're very passionate about a certain part of evidence capture, or very, very, very much look into each piece of equipment you're using to understand it to the best abilities. Read those manuals, as boring as they are. So when you capture evidence, you can actually say it's true or not, right? Based on those
Yeah.
parameters.
And I found with my Polaroid, like when I'm taking the Polaroid, there's a certain light anomaly that happens with fluorescent tubing lighting that happens every time I use it. So, I mean, I know to not count that as anything because it just seems to happen every time I'm in a space that has those tube lightings. Kathy's just asking, what about orbs seen with the naked eye?
So orb seen with the naked eye. Um, I've never seen one personally myself. Actually, I would say no. I've never seen one with my eye. What I have seen is a static energy discharging in a space by itself, which it appears to be an orb, but it's like a flash, a really quick flash in a charged space. What about you, Carrie? Have you seen any orbs with
So
your?
I I I have, um, though I can't. I wanted. I'm not wanting to 100% for sure say that it was normal, but it was a retreat. We were in an A-frame space, so it's very lofted, like when you're going up to the top loft, and uh, a ball of light flew right in front of me. So I can't say that it wasn't something from the side that was kicked up from other people in a different place of the house. I don't really know what it was, but there was something that was weird for sure. But usually like you I guess too you'd have to be paying attention to the time of day and when it is, and if you were looking at a light and turn away, you're going to see flickers of colors and light in front of you. So there's things that are tricking your eyes too, right?
True, yeah. Or
Oh, she's
you're in a
saying
dusty room and that.
exactly in a distance.
Sorry,
So
if yeah, you're in a dusty room and you see that light shining through a skylight, and that
yeah,
perfect beam of light's just right through, and dust flies through. Now you're seeing orbs.
yeah,
Doesn't mean that people can't see orbs or that's not true because it's something that has been reported. People see, and it's hard to validate, right?
exactly. Hard to validate. And tiny orb floated along the ceiling in a darkened room. That's very fascinating.
It's definitely interesting. I don't. You can speculate, but you're in that space when it happened with some devices to test that. It would only be speculation from my point of view.
Exactly. Exactly. I don't, could we, Laura Lee, could we load the, you were calling it the Advent. So it's the video with the chandelier light. Thank you, Howie.
Thanks,
Howie's
Howie.
saying, yeah, Howie's saying, Grant, you're the first person I've seen on a podcast bringing charts and examples. Now that's professional.
Thanks. It's hard when you're trying to um, broadcast over multiple formats, I guess. if someone's listening in, they're not going to see these pictures and charts, but if they see the video, then it's going to be fantastic for them, I hope. I love teaching people about this stuff. It's a passion as well as helping people in that, because it brings some kind of, it removes a lot of that fear that people assume is automatic, right? If they know
Yeah.
more, then these things are explainable, then they're no longer terrifying, and it helps that person move past it. So I love
And it
that.
helps us get evidence to support one another too, right? When we are researching, to have evidence that has directs us in a better way. We can filter things out faster
For
if we're
sure.
educated.
Definitely.
So the video that we're going to put up, there's actually two. Yeah, there's two videos. It's a video that I took that I find interesting, but I can't explain necessarily what it is. So, not necessarily saying that it's. Um, so there's my puppers. So the rooms have all changed around, but that's my bedroom, was my bedroom. So we're talking about the light, the chandelier light that's hanging. So if you watch this video, this is me standing. So the ceilings are really tall because we're in an older house. I am 5'2" ish. I used to think I was 5'3", but I don't think I'm 5'3" anymore. So that's me showing how much you have to turn this light in order to make the light turn off and on. And I didn't have a remote because Nora, who's my puppy, ate it. She chewed it. So there's no remote. So you literally have to stand up and twist those lights off and on to make them go. So I was reading my Kindle. It was about midnight. And then I noticed if Laura Lee, if you could put the video where it's dark. Yes, this one. So you can see in the middle of the screen, it's starting to light up. It's just this light in this dark space. So it was just before midnight and I was reading my Kindle, and then this happened. And then it just goes off. It starts off, it's bright, it's slowly turned on, and then it's slowly shut off. It's crazy.
It's one of those things where it's a twist to make the connection between, I assume there's a battery in there, probably,
Mm-hmm. And so
in the
that's the
candle.
thing. So nobody upstairs stomping on the floor, walking around where it would have been knocked. It was like close to midnight. There's no window open. There was definitely no hanky panky going on in the bed where somebody's jumping around like Tarzan. There was like nothing going on. So like it was just super weird. But I find too, it was like right before Christmas, like clearly, right? Because I had the little, garlandy thing on it. But it wasn't something that I could make happen again. It's not something that happened a second time. Now, I know I'm going to tilt this up so everybody can kind of see that light has moved into my office. So it's right above my head here. And I mean, it has happened a few times when I've done some work, like when I'm doing work in here, where it's twisted sort of off and on, but not in the same way that it did that night. And for me, I was like, I know I got clients tomorrow. You're a day early. You're not allowed to bug me in the middle of the night. So you'll just have to chill till tomorrow. And I was like, just don't do it anymore if it's really something, right? But
Yeah,
yeah.
it's good. There's a investigative technique that's kind of interesting. I wouldn't say you could put a lot of weight into it, but it's, if you've ever seen it, where you take those twist flashlights where you have to twist them to turn them on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or they like mag lights, I think, the smaller mag lights, if you're familiar with that brand. You twist the top of it to turn it on or off. And there's some kind of paranormal techniques that were early. You'd ask yes or no questions and you turn it just to the point where it's almost on but not. And then you'd set it down somewhere and be like, okay, spirits, bridge that gap, bridge that electrical gap. Like it's not much, it's almost there. All you have to do is come in the
Yeah.
theory that spirits are made of energy or electricity. It would make sense that that could happen, right? So perhaps in your situation, it's a twist where the battery's there. Maybe you could say that's one suggestion that a spirit was playing with it, but then
Mhm.
why that one and not all of them? Was that one
Yeah.
twisted closer than the other ones, or did that one have a newer battery and the other ones had a
Yeah.
weaker connection? It's hard to say, right? But it's
No, but
definitely
those are all
when
the right questions to ask. So then
yeah.
electrical things. So lights flickering off and on. I know that spirits can do that. So how and I have a son who's an electrician. So, making
Oh, there you go.
sure that yeah. Yes, when is it needing to call an electrician? When is it something I've had one video sent to me, and it was very interesting because they were definitely asking, for those yes, no sort of responses with the dining room light that was flicking, and it seemed to be responding intelligently to those yes, no questions with the dining room light. So definitely, I've seen that they can do that. Um, but how do you make sure? How do you tell the difference between paranormal, explainable? Explainable would be your electrician son, or when it's what
Yeah,
the
you
heck, like my light above my bed.
so you become an inspector, you become a home
Yeah,
inspector too. So you're
exactly.
um, investigating, you're trying to rule out everything that makes sense. And when it doesn't make sense, you've exhausted, then it becomes paranormal because paranormal is just it's beyond normal. Doesn't mean it's a
Yeah.
demon or a ghost. It
No.
just means I don't have an explanation for you. And then we love and based on our interactions, we suggest it's a spirit. From my point of view, I don't have a psychic ability, so I can't see beyond what I can test. I can feel things in the environment and sense things, but I can't communicate like you can, um, in your experiences. So in that situation, we'd look at like the light bulbs, the light switches, how old is the house, what kind of wiring does it have, perhaps. Do you have a mouse infestation that's chewing on your wires? Through our audio
Oh,
devices,
I
we might
forget about
hear
that.
mice, right? We might hear mice in
Mm,
the walls, which is very terrifying to hear from an investigator point of view because rodents are gross, but
yeah.
some people like them. I think they're gross. Don't eat my house. So we had one case up north where your equipment does pay for itself sometimes if you invest into good audio stuff. And we could actually hear mice running in the walls, and we went back to the client. We're like, that scratching in your walls is actually mice. You need an exterminator to come in and deal with that. And she's like, no, 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 that's why I have cats. I'm like, okay, well, the scratching is just gonna keep happening. Enjoy your all your other problems you're gonna have. So yeah, then
Yikes.
and we've had things like that too, where I've seen in apartments. Or also look at your breakers too. Do you need to change some fuses in your breaker in your house, perhaps, or is there issues like that? Um, but when they respond to you when you're asking questions, it's the what the heck moment. Like maybe this isn't just a malfunction. Maybe this is a spirit, and corroborates that client's story. So we're always trying to test. I tell people, and it can seem strange for some people to even consider that, but when I test, I always like to test for intelligence. That's my bar I'm always going for.
With
So with investigating it as a
mm,
whole, you're looking for intelligent responses. I'm not
yeah.
saying, "Hey, come turn this light on." I'm saying, "Hey, there's this equipment. Interact with it as you will, and if you choose to answer my questions, go for it." Like they're not barking dogs, right? Like you said, where they're gonna do things every time you ask them.
Yeah.
Um, but if there is an intelligence there, you're gonna get intelligent responses, and that can give you an idea of what's going on, and you can categorize what that haunting, if it is a haunting, where it falls, if you believe in the wild world of supernatural like I do. So, and hopefully a lot of the listeners too. So,
Yeah, and I think people may hear the word haunting and then see it from a different point of view as well too, right? If they're thinking that it's dad that's coming in, and they're not going to want to use the word haunting either. Like it's just dad in
yeah,
spirit popping in and saying hello, right? Or supporting you if you had a bad day, because all of that plays a factor too. What I've also found too is asking those questions if the person that's in the home has had traumas and is maybe extra sensitive as well too, because um, that psychokinesis can happen, right? Where it's actually stuff that's happening in a space is actually happening from that person. So really, not wanting to sound judgmental or intrusive, but asking some of those intimate questions to really understand what's happening in the space and with that person and what they're bringing to the
right.
table.
You just dug into my like second favorite topic.
Yeah, I love this topic too, like a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, because
your
it's not always
parapsychology.
demons. It is not always demons.
Yeah.
It's like,
You're
and
for
people don't
anyone
want to
that
take
doesn't
accountability.
know.
People don't want to take accountability for their
Yeah.
role and how some things play out, right?
Yeah, for a lot of people that might not have heard that before, it's called parapsychology. It's one of the fundamentals. And it's a lot of that centers around poltergeist activity.
Mhm.
And they call it RSPK, reoccurrent spontaneous psychokinesis. So it's reoccurrent, it happens frequently, it's spontaneous because they're not controlling it. They are controlling it, but they're not aware of it, and they're actually manipulating things with their mind. So RSPK is a great term, and that's you look at a lot of major hauntings, infamous ones that are centered around like adolescent kids
Mhm.
or near-death experiences is the other big one, and the whole idea of perhaps hormonal changes within the body is you're
Yeah.
activating more of your brain, and through that your brain is spontaneously interacting with your environment without you being aware. There was a fantastic book by, I believe it was Michael Clarkson, a Canadian author who did like, I believe he did true crime, but he did a brief 2 or 3 book stint on parapsychology, and the poltergeist phenomenon was one of his books he wrote about. And they actually studied people at several universities trying to reenact and get these things to happen on demand. Super fascinating if people love to read.
Mhm.
But they found two of the biggest factors are those near-death experiences or out-of-body experiences when you die and you can see everything going on around you. You revived, and then you tell that story, and it blows people away, right? Um, but their brain is more active now because they have passed away. Now they've been revived, so their brain can do more than the average person, and that's why those things theoretically can happen around those people. Give it a read if you can. You'll learn a lot.
I think yeah, I know someone who like has broke dishes. Like dishes have broke in those high emotional, high intense moments for them. So, that was my learning curve with, because thought for sure that there was a poltergeist in their space, but I'm like, you need some Tai Chi and therapy. You need some Zen, and we're gonna
Yeah,
calm the energy in the space, and let's see if like let's just um and I think just be open minded. I'm open minded that there could have been a spirit in this space throwing her dishes around for sure, but I definitely
yeah.
that's not
There's
what there's other
another great example.
explanations.
Yeah, another great example or another case. I believe it's called The Haunting on Lindley Street in the United States. And there was, it's one of the best documented paranormal cases I've ever read about. And a lot of people don't even know about it, but in its prime, there was actually, I believe, up to 40,000 people outside of this house just standing around like a mob, waiting for activity to happen because it was so famous. And
Wow.
uh, I'm surprised that hasn't become a movie, to be honest. But there's all these investigations that went on, and the first half of this book explains all the haunting, all these activity that was documented by like police officers, firefighters, like professionals were going on the record writing about what they were seeing in this home. Um, and then a parapsychology team came in and did their own research, and they mapped out like this happened 10 meters from this person at this time. Like they got down to like the measurements and everything. And what they found was when the daughter was in the same space as the mother, was the adopted mom, that heightened emotion state between the two of them actually caused poltergeist activity in the home
Mm.
and substantial, whereas like lazy boy recliner chairs were lifting up and dumping people out of them. Awesome case, really, really cool. And like that goes to that that they felt was that psychokinesis connection. It wasn't a demon like we would automatically assume being a spiritualist or
Yeah.
or someone that just likes horror genre, right? You're gonna jump towards that because it's terrifying and people love to be scared. Truthfully, a lot of people love to be scared unless it's in your own home. So
I guess it's that dopamine rush, right? It's like that adrenaline rush. Joyce is here. Hi, Joyce. I took a picture of my granddaughter on my phone. Later, I made a digital copy. There was a bright orb beside her head in the copy that was not there in the original.
that's interesting. So the skeptic side in me is saying, okay, if it wasn't in the original, it could have been in the development process that showed up. Maybe a problem with the ink if it was. Oh, no, sorry. You said you made a digital copy. So did you just copy it from the device and then create another copy of the same file within your computer? Or was this like a printed copy? If you're still there, Joyce, I'd love to hear more. But
Yeah.
because if it was a printed physical copy, like you could say maybe it was a problem with the development process that lended to that, or it could have just been the screen you're looking at as well. Maybe the screen wasn't big enough that you could pick that out.
So she's
So
saying
yeah,
yes.
it was just a
Oh,
digital copy.
oh, it's just
So
digital.
yeah, I would say typically from historical reviews, I would say that it could be a flare from a light source. If there's no, um, I always encourage people not to jump to that's a ghost explanation. I say, okay, what else happened in that moment? Did the person feel a chill? Did they experience something? Was there a scent or something else, some other form of energy that went along with that? And then you could say perhaps, because one thing happening by itself, I'd say, isn't necessarily enough evidence to strongly convince someone that that's a spirit. It's interesting, 100%. It's interesting. I think there's a lot of these cases where they're interesting.
They are
Um,
exactly. If you're just
but
joining us, thank you for being here. You are listening to Spirit Switchboard. We have Grant Evans from the Ontario Paranormal Society, and you are listening to us live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 FM New Orleans. Let's talk about ghost spots, cold spots.
cold spots, yes. That's other. I love watching television shows where people say, "Oh, did you feel that?
Yeah,
Oh, did you feel that?
because it happens on
Oh, did you feel that?"
everyone, every single one. It
Um,
it feels like that.
that's
And but I have to tell you the truth, like when I'm doing sessions for people, when I'm in sessions with people, um I will feel cold spots for sure, but Not always cold spots. It will feel like absolute cold fingers, literal fingers that are grabbing my wrist. It feels like cold individual fingers that are holding my wrist, but that's a sign and symbol for
Wow.
me about them being able to do things in a space. So I then
Hmm.
they'll it's kind of like remote viewing, so they'll show me what the space looks like where they're connecting with that person. So I don't really know for sure. I can't say 100% for sure that they are actually holding my wrist and it's their cold fingers around my wrist that I'm feeling, or if that's just the sign and symbol that's developed for me over time to say that they're doing something in that space.
That's interesting. Yeah. So also, um, I love that because a lot of spirit theory is energy, right? So there's lots of forms of energy. The thermal energy is a big one too, not just electrical. And you get those cold blasts. I believe that does happen. I've had that happen to myself. Um, and we're able to capture that too. That's the key, right? I believe it
Yeah.
happens and it's true because I run to a thermometer and say, okay, let's get a digital thermometer. Is it actually cold or am I thinking it's cold? Or I use a device called a FLIR, which is developed for firefighters to find hot spots in burning buildings after they think they've put it out. They can still see if there's a fire in between the walls. Um, we can see that thermal energy in a space to corroborate that. And spirits, you could say, would be cold because heat energy, like the hotter it is, the more energy something has, right? Molecules are moving faster, the hotter they are. So if you were theoretically to see a spirit, you should see them as a cold or experience them as a cold, if that makes sense. It makes sense to
Yeah.
me. I hope I'm not confusing people, but
No,
here's
but you
a
would you would have to be mindful if you're doing an investigation where it's not like if you're in a kitchen with those steel fridge and stove and somebody's rubbed but like put their hand on it and stepped away and then they're taking a picture. Like that's going to leave an imprint of something, right?
yeah, for sure. And we do demonstrate that sometimes for people when we do tours, we'll hold our handle on the wall for like a few seconds and you take it off and you can
Yeah.
still see your handprint. But that's always going to be hot. That's a human thing, right? So
Yeah.
this is an example from a FLIR camera that my team had. And this was, we were at a home in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, upstairs in the house, and my investigator teammate was looking down, just playing with the camera, trying to make sure it was recording, not really paying attention, because sometimes we do that as investigators. We're like squirrels, and or a dog chasing a squirrel. We're
Yeah.
looking around. What's that? What's that? What's
Yeah.
that? So we are getting this camera going, and she was looking down the staircase towards the main level at the front of the house. And this house was completely empty of furniture, um, carpets, anything. It was just us and our equipment. And you can see that red kind of spot in the bottom of the frame. That was just from the heat closest to her. And you see that what looks like the shape of a person, you could argue. And that dark blue is very, very cold. Usually red, yellow are the highest temperatures. So we didn't have an explanation for this, and it was the front of the house when no one was there. There was no drafts. Um, I believe it wasn't in the winter time, so you wouldn't see a draft just sitting in one spot. Like there's no vent there. So
Yeah.
you
It's
you're missing that
isolated
like
in one spot.
airflow. It's isolated, and it almost looks to me like someone leaning up against
Yeah,
a
it
cabinet
does.
or something, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I as an investigator, I can say that could be a spirit. Or one of my colleagues also, he's a police officer, he likes to say it's evidentiary because it's not pure evidence. I can't say beyond a shadow of doubt that that's evidence this exists, but it's leaning evidence towards that this could be a spirit because we don't
Right.
have any other explanation for why there's the shape of a person that's cold there, and very uniquely in that space. If the whole space was cold, the whole space would be that color, right?
Right.
So that's very fascinating for us, and we actually have a video of the same. That's a still frame from the video that we have from the same device on the same case. So if you can show it, you see that it's warmer in the space. She's just trying to make sure that it's actually recording and checking it out. And that's the railing from where she's looking over. Look down, you kind of see a few things. I believe light fixtures that were in the space, and then you
Yeah,
just see this person. It
that
changes in
anomaly.
between different settings. Yeah, we're not talking about anything important in that moment. We're just bantering because we're investigating. But yeah, it's fascinating, right? So
Yeah.
I do believe that spirits can manifest as cold energies, and sometimes they'll take warm or heat energy from a space to manifest, or you might see a sudden change in temperature before someone manifests, or you capture something. Um, I have experienced this myself, um, in a space at a museum in Kitchener once again, where I was with another investigator that was relatively new on our team, and we went upstairs to the main level of this heritage museum. And she said, "Oh my God, something's following us." And I said, "Okay, well, just take a breath, calm down, see what it wants. Like it might be trying to manifest or show us something." And she jumped on my back and was like, "Oh no, like don't leave me, don't run away from me." And I'm laughing because I've experienced things like this before. Um, and it was from about waist down, but only on the backs of our legs
Mm,
that we just felt cold. And you could actually put your hand on your leg. So right away you would think, okay, well, there's a draft in the house. Someone opened the door, opened a window or something. There must be airflow for it to hit directionally at one part of your body. But we then went to three or four different rooms in the house. It went away and then it would come back again, go in and come back again. So it was very fascinating. Like something just wanted us to know they're there with us. So I believe thermal energy is a big thing in the
it is.
supernatural that maybe doesn't get enough attention that it should, especially on TV. And the reason for that too is because it's easy for me to tell you there's a cold spot without proving it to you. And it's interesting. It's
Yeah.
automatically interesting, right? Oh, it's cold here. But
So
then if they
I've
take the
had,
time to prove that it's not, right? Then it makes them look silly for getting all excited about it, right?
but I think that that would be being transparent and looking silly would be relatable. Like,
Yeah, for
because
sure.
we've all like jumped at things, and at least it would be transparent and relatable. When I've done private seances in the house, we've set up the like a temperature gauge, and you can feel when it shifts. And we've asked spirits if they can move the temperature higher like to a certain number, and we'll say like it could be, this room is cold, like I'm in an older house, there's no light fixtures in the ceilings, like I don't even know if there's like insulation in this room, it's cold, like you have to have an extra heater in here. So we've asked them to move it from 68 to 72, and ask 72 specifically, and they'll pull the temperature
Oh
up
wow.
where the temperature gauge is reading 72. So that's interesting.
Well,
It's not.
if your house is very old, it could be like the plaster walls with like horsehair insulation.
Mhm.
They're very cold. No matter what you do, they're always cold.
Yeah.
So if you're
Yeah.
looking around that 1900, early 1900 age, you're gonna have those very cold rooms, unfortunately. But
Yeah. Yeah. It's cold, and it is those plaster walls in here. So that's what our place is like.
oh,
You
nice.
not really hanging everything, right? Trying to hang stuff doesn't work either.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
My previous
Um,
house had that, and we got a crack in the wall. I'm like, oh no, how do I fix this? It's plaster. I can't just drywall it, right?
you can't.
So
No.
old homes are beautiful, but they're very fun to maintain.
Mm-mm.
So.
No. um, you sent a video that we're just gonna Laura Lee is gonna load up for us from the cemetery. So, you know, I think yeah, is it
This was
this
a
one?
different, that's a picture from a different one. So I can talk about this one while it's up if you want.
Yeah.
This was a client sent us a video from their home security system, and what happened, you see a tree there and this white kind of mist around it. Not sure, you can't zoom in too much, but you can kind of see that even though it's not super fine. Yeah, you see that there more around there. So the video was very fascinating because middle of the winter, it was snowing. The roofs had snow on them up in Canada. We're unfortunate blessing. Oh, don't play that one yet. Go back. The if you can go back to that picture, thank you.
Thank you,
So
Lorraine.
that video, yeah, it's two separate videos. I'm sorry, I should have clarified that before. But this one, you see something in the camera, and it's linear. Almost looks like a piece of floss with like light anomalies along it. It was a spider web flash, the infrared light
Oh,
from the home security camera bouncing out, and a lot of people um, will also get that impression that a spider web is a spirit because it's orbs and it's moving and it's linear, it's moving back and forth in front of the camera. This one was doing that, but then the fascinating thing with this video too is that you see something fly off the roof, and it looks like it hits this tree and explodes into this big round white mist ball around it, and you hear a very loud boom. So the skeptic in me was like, okay, it's the ice coming off the roof. Maybe it's windy, something flew off, and it was very quick that it looked like what the person thought was a portal opening, almost like Predator when the Predator shifts from being invisible
right.
to visible again. But you hear this very loud boom sound when it hits. So is it ice hitting the tree and then exploding? That's one suggestion. Um, Oh, there's another phenomenon. I believe it's called cold booms, where the environment there's like tectonic
Oh,
plates under the earth where when they shift due to very cold temperature, it actually will cause the ice to crack like below the surface, and it creates this loud boom noise. So that was another explanation, or maybe it was a spirit that just randomly manifest at this person's tree for no apparent reason. I don't know. But the most obvious answer is more than likely the most correct answer, especially with investigating too. We can pull 100 theories out, but in all reality, it's winter and something flew, exploded against a tree, and made a ball. The most
yeah.
obvious answer would be a piece of ice or snow that hit it. So, but it's a really cool video, and it's something that we do get every now and then. You get those crazy videos that all of a sudden you're going down the rabbit hole, like, okay, what can cause a really loud boom in the middle of the
But
winter? And then you're on
that's
Google and you're
fun.
typing away, and
That's the fun of it.
yeah, it can be very fun.
Yeah. And
You're your own
being able to have
true
all those
crime
different
detective, right?
exactly. What if, what if, what if, what if? So could we look at that cemetery video next? Is that something that we could do next, Lorelei? Thank you. Yep.
This, you see, so some context to this video. It was a client had sent us this video asking our opinion on what it was. Um, and this was he lived across from this property in his house, and he was saying, "Oh, you got to get in here. Like my home security camera is capturing this on the property adjacent to me." But this property that was adjacent to him was a cemetery with a church on it, um, and an active church, um, holding things every Sunday. And he's like, "Oh man, there's so many stories here. I'm a caretaker here. This. You guys got to get in here." As investigators, we can't go anywhere unless we have permission. You don't want
Mhm.
to trespass and get a ticket from the police. That's not fun for anyone.
Mm-mm.
Um, but this was a very fascinating video, and he said the person that actually first noticed it, the reason why it's filmed with a cell phone on a computer screen is because it's like a security camera for the actual location. But his friend had posted it on TikTok for his friends to see because he thought it was scary. So it's interesting when you watch it, it almost looks like someone's kind of pacing the grounds there. Um, and it looks like a linear humanoid kind of shape moving side to side. It disappears, goes in and out of the frame. You see those white kind of orbs bouncing around for a lot of people that love orbs. Those are all bugs flying
Bugs.
around. It's the
Yeah.
summertime. Those aren't orbs, those are bugs. But that linear movement is fascinating, right? Uh, the skeptic side to me would say most things that are linear, bouncing around on a security camera, very likely could be a spider web or a bug web that's picking up that infrared light. And it's wind. The wind is moving that reflection side to side, and it's kind of phasing in and out as that light reflects off it. Or it very well could be a spirit, right? I because it's owned property by a church. A lot of churches don't want us investigating in the supernatural at a church because they don't want people playing with that on their property
Mhm.
typically. Um, so and the whole cemetery thing, right? Like it's very plausible that that could be a spirit, and it's very fascinating piece of evidence. I would say that you could take it either way, right? You come up for those explanations, and based on your own education and what you think it could be, or you're very much you could be right both ways, in my opinion, on that one. Very fascinating, and I would love to have investigated that more. Um, but obviously, permission is a big thing. We can't just break in, unfortunately.
No.
Trespassing is a big thing in Canada.
And
So,
there's a lot of places that don't want I mean, I understand church is not wanting to be investigated, but there's places that don't want that history or reputation of being haunted and having that kind of attraction that comes along with it, right? They just want to um, keep on the down low if they have things going on. Not everybody wants that reputation.
yeah, I've heard there's a lot of historical buildings or museums that have that reputation for being haunted, and the owners absolutely deny it or don't allow it to even be suggested or brought up.
Hmm.
Um, I I've heard if you're Ontario, Canada, there's a great historical place called Dundurn Castle, where I was told that the guides, when they do the historical guide walkthroughs, were told at one point that they were not to talk about it at all, not to bring it
Mm.
up. Some people are so superstitious they think if you talk about it, you're bringing bad luck too, right? Like, don't talk
Uh,
about breaking your leg because you might break your leg.
I guess.
Like
I don't
that
know.
old school
Did you get to
superstition,
walk?
right? Like you talk about.
Did you get to walk through
So
Kingston
go ahead.
Pen?
I have not walked through there, unfortunately.
Mm. So they have a script they have to follow. So it is given to them. They're not allowed to deviate from their script. And yeah, so when I went, I was like, if I ask you a question, can you maybe nod your head up and down or shake it back and forth for a yes and no for me? Because it was kind of an interesting experience. But then they had like retired uh uh, guards. They had retired guards that were at different places. So if you
Oh
stopped and
wow.
kind of asked them questions, they would give you the down low on, and then pulling up their phones and showing you photos of things that they had captured on their phones as well too. But
Wow.
the guides were not allowed to talk about any of that. Like we walked by one section and I looked in and I had to look away really quickly because all I saw were rats. I saw rats coming out of the toilet. There was rats coming everywhere. And
Oof.
and it shocked me. And I said, oh my gosh, blurted out when I probably shouldn't. So I knew from that moment on to keep it to myself. I'm like, is there any reason why I'm seeing rats in there? And she went, mm. And she nodded her head, and then she just kept going with her script and didn't go any further. But there was like a lot. It was a lot. I found the wardens, the museum across the street was more intense actually than Kingston Pen for me, because they had like
Wow.
shanked like all of contraband and things that they had in the cells that they could use for interrogation, uh, like from a long time ago.
Usually,
That
isn't it like a lot of those prisons, the house or the museum beside it is actually the warden's house where they lived. So
yeah, so it's the
I,
warden's house
I
across
think
the
there's
street
a
that I've
few,
yeah,
yeah, a
yeah,
few places like that through the UK as well, like England and that, where that was the case, I believe. Um, Richard Estep or Estep has a
yep,
bunch of books about investigations he's done, and he's done prison ones, and I'm pretty sure he said like the warden's house is worse than the jail sometimes.
yeah,
So
that's exactly how I
it's super
experienced it.
fascinating.
Yeah, that's exactly how I experienced it. Um, okay, like, can we talk about EVPs next?
Sure.
Okay, because I find them fascinating.
What's your
I like when you don't even know that you've caught something and you're listening back, and then it's like, holy cow, there's something over top of you. Like, so for those that don't know, can you explain what EVPs are?
So EVP is like electronic voice phenomenon. Instead of saying big words all the time, we just say EVP. Um, so I love EVPs. I would say I did a presentation for a university, a local university last year, I believe it was, and I had all statistics from all of our cases in the last couple of years, and at least 90% of our evidence is audio EVPs.
Mm,
So when people are looking at all these things they're investigating, EVPs are the bar. Like that's where you're gonna catch the most stuff. That's
yeah,
where you're gonna get all that stuff. And when you do get substantial stuff, it can be quite unnerving too. Um, I had a case up in like Northern Ontario. I've been working with them for about 2 years now. Where
so
the
let me
first time we
interrupt just for
went
a
up,
second. What's Northern Ontario for you?
yeah,
Because Southern Ontario people think Barrie's north, and it's not. Like, I know that it kind of is,
no,
but that's not
like
Northern Ontario. So let's say what Northern
um,
Ontario is.
I was Northern Ontario would be above Barrie for sure.
Yeah.
uh,
I'm from Sault Ste.
I
Marie, so
wanna,
like,
yeah, that's definitely north.
yeah.
I consider anything like, what's it? It's a Hudson Bay along that corridor up there, like above Owen Sound.
Owen
I would say
Sound.
for me is Northern Ontario.
Okay.
If I'm driving like 4 hours to get to you, I'd say that's Northern Ontario for me.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not going to Thunder Bay because that's a lot. That's like a day's drive. But
That's where Laura Lee lives.
um, so yeah, that's awesome. So we're at this house and we spent hours and hours at this house. And the story was very compelling that the clients gave us. Everything was like we're walking into like a hot zone. We need to be on our A game. Like this could be scary. We went up and we spent hours in audio, video recording. A few of our sensors went off, but we came out thinking like just gassed. We're like, that was such a letdown. Like we got nothing. Like that's so disappointing. And then we went back that week. A few days after, a bunch of our teammates were like, "Oh, we feel tired. We feel cranky and grumpy. Like I don't know if we're just like you get that paranormal hangover that people talk about, where you're up to
Yeah.
like godly hours and then you're just exhausted for a couple days."
Yeah.
Um, but we went and reviewed. Our review team went over all the audio, and we were blown away by how much evidence we captured. Like we had laughing that wasn't there. We had people walking up and down the staircases in the house. We had a mimic. One of the only times I've ever actually audio captured a mimic. It
Mm,
blew my shoes right off. I heard that and I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" And we
that's
thought this was such a goose egg.
and that's the thing.
So
That's what I
audio,
like it.
audio, audio, audio.
Yeah, audio for sure. And
Yeah,
when you don't
100%
even know it's
audio.
there, when you don't even know it's happening. Um, So we have a clip. Yes, thank you, Laurie. So we have this clip. My daughter and I were doing a live seance for like an intuitive mentoring group that I run on social media. And so my daughter hung out with me. We're doing this seance, and we were using the spirit board, and we had some stuff happening, but we didn't hear anything at the time. I didn't hear it with my outside ear. We didn't know anything had happened until the people who were watching the live messaged us, and I saw their messages after and went back to review it. So we'll just play it and see if you can hear.
Yes. Okay. What would you like to share? N O. Don't want to share. R M. Norm. W.
Yeah, you can hear it right at the end.
So one of the things that we find with audio too is you have to have good playback to hear a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. So right at the end, you can hear that breathy high. And I mean, you don't even need the headphones to hear it.
W.
Yeah. This
Right
is
there,
crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we always say when we capture a lot of spirit EVPs, it's always like a whispery, like breathy communication. It's typically not a hi, how are you today? It's like a hi,
Yeah.
how are you?
Yeah. It's
And a lot of times you
breathy.
miss that in the overlay. It's always breathy.
Yeah. And
But when we did capture that mimic, it was as loud as someone in that space. It really like put us back. We're like, holy smokes! Like, are you sure no one said anything? Or like, you got to be kidding me! Like, it's one of those oh my god moments where you capture something
yeah.
so incredible. So,
I
but
caught.
typically, that's the type of evidence we hear.
Yeah, and I love that. That gets you even more excited to do that and to stay open-minded. Like people have this expectation that it's going to be in that moment, and you don't know what you've caught or what's happened until after the fact, and having to stay open to it for sure. I did an investigation. It was pretty informal of a like a recording studio, a sound studio that somebody had made for themselves. And so it's all carpeting, it's that eggshell kind of or egg crate looking foam stuff all on the walls. And when you play the recording back, I was sitting in a chair. I was in the room by myself. I put the recorder on a stool. So I'm not touching it. I'm not holding it. Nothing's brushing up against it. And you can hear footsteps and whistling walking towards me. like, and
In a
there's
soundproof room.
in a soundproof room, you can hear somebody walking like on a hardwood floor with heels on. And yeah, it was fun.
Wow,
It was super fun. That was in Brantford.
that's
That
oh
actually
wow,
where
yeah.
the
It's probably I might have been in the same building as you when we've had some pretty interesting things. Was it downtown?
mm-mm, mm-mm. It
Downtown
was
Brantford?
above an
No?
auto body
Okay.
shop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Different building then. But yeah, Brantford's an awesome city for paranormal stuff. But
Yeah.
a great way to do that in the moment is a technique called live listening. If anyone's not oh, or knowledgeable or knows about live listening, it's the same thing as using just your normal EVP like audio recorder, but you put headphones into it. So you're actually hearing the audio with a bit of a delay. So it plays with your head a little bit initially. You got to get used to it. But you put a headphone jack into your audio recorder and you're hearing everything that's coming into the microphone of that recorder live, and it's amplified crazy loud. So there's been a couple cases. My team, a bunch of our teammates, investigators went and did a breakfast television, city TV, if morning show, little guest thing with the host there, and our teammate that was live listening actually heard some EVPs in the moment, while she was there in the studio doing the segment with
Love
them, which
that.
was super cool. Like, and she picked up on it right away. She's like, I think I heard this, and then we reviewed it to confirm, but she heard it in the moment. So that's one great way,
Yeah.
to try and get that feedback sooner. Or you do burst EVP sessions. So you'll do like a 3 to 5 minute quick audio Q&A and then play it back to you. But you're limited to the audio of the device too. Like, those devices are great for recording, not for playback. So you always have to be mindful of that too.
Yeah. And I think too, making sure that you um set the ground rules if you're doing an investigation with people that maybe haven't investigated before. Like, everybody needs to be quiet. No, like a coat that's crinkly and you're outside and it's cold. Like, making sure what those parameters are, that you've taken care of that. So if nobody's chewing gum or their belly's grumbling because they didn't eat their snack at snack time, like, it's making
Yeah,
sure all that
or
stuff is covered too, right?
yeah, that's your snacks, right? You bring your snacks so you don't get
I
that.
know. I
And then
investigation snacks are
yeah,
important.
I've been told I can't have Mexican before an investigation by my teammates. So
Because does your belly rumble pretty loud? Yes, Howie,
it does, yeah.
exactly.
And just like, yeah, Howie, you're bang on. Everything you do, you say like, oh, I just tripped, I just banged into something, or no whispering, you're talking loud, because those EVPs are whispering voices usually.
Mhm.
And call it out like, oh, I just heard my colleague in the basement talking, because I recognize the voice. And then if you go back and say, hey, I wasn't talking, and you can compare notes, then okay, well, maybe it wasn't.
Especially if
Um,
you're not gonna be the one
it's
doing the
great.
review, because the person who's listening, if you're not
Yeah,
doing your own review and somebody's doing the review, they won't know.
for
Like, they
sure. That's great. Your car is driving by. Oh, car drove by. Or, oh,
Yeah.
I just closed the door. Like, you're walking into a space. Grant's coming into this room. You announce you're coming in. That way, if someone's listening, they start hearing footsteps. They're like, oh no, what's that? Right? It's great to always be obvious, like Howie says there. Great call. Howie, are you an investigator?
Yes, Howie actually, has a podcast, and runs the Rift Nation, so you may be
Awesome.
getting a request to do another show, which would be awesome. It would be great
Well,
to connect
thanks, Howie.
with Howie for sure. Okay, I had this list of things that I wanted to talk about: paranormal, explainable, or what the heck. So, doors shutting, doors slamming shut. Um, let's talk about doors. I don't really have that. Well, I mean, I have that happen in this house, but it's explainable why that's happening in this
Mhm.
house when the door slam. But definitely, people talk about door slamming as part of the paranormal experiences that they're having, and they want you to investigate. Can you talk about that?
So door slamming, I believe, I'm not a contractor,
Yeah.
but I believe most door frames, when they're put in, they're actually angled to force it to close. So if you, like, in my house, as an example, if I have the window open in my bathroom, and the door is open, it will close itself with a draft. So um paralogian. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Howie. Um, yeah, doors. I find doors, with newer building codes, they're meant to close. They're framed that way to force them to close. So if it's open a significant amount, then you have to consider a lot of things, like the age of the home. Is it floorboards shifting with the seasons, hot, cold? You get a
Mhm.
lot of like homes with hardwood floors, um, and there's creaking, more creaking, or I hear footsteps at night, because that's the heat and the wood expanding, causing that change and that creaking noise. We did a house not too long ago in Brantford. The person was pretty much built a whole new house on the back of the house, and he was hearing footsteps. And it's, well, you can still see all the frames all the framework and the floor joists exposed, and it's that hot and cold through the space that's causing that footsteps or the creaking. So doors
Yeah.
closing on themselves. So a lot of that, one of those things, like I said, even with paranormal evidence on a whole, I like to have like a rule of more. I would say it's the rule of more if I'm going to term anything. If you get one piece of evidence, it's interesting, but you need more.
Yeah.
You need at least two things happening in conjunction for me to say, oh, that's interesting, or maybe that's paranormal. Like, so that door closes, and then maybe you hear a breathy EVP while it's closing,
Yeah. You
or
want to hear get
maybe,
out. Get out.
yeah,
And the door
get out.
closing.
What's, yeah.
We have
So
a
I've
vacuum
had
that
those,
happens.
yeah,
We have like this
yeah,
vacuum that happens between the back door and the front door that are directly in line with each other. So, one door may pop open and the other is slamming shut. Like we have this vacuum that happens. So, I mean, that's also something that you can use when you're checking things out.
yeah. Like there's like home efficiency things now,
Yeah.
at least in Ontario, where the power company will give you rebates, or the government will give you rebates on how efficient and how airtight your house is. So you're pretty much creating a vacuum within your house. So
Yeah.
that's a great way to put it. Like you're getting doors closing because there is that airtight space to prevent heat loss and to reduce your bills and your monthly cost of heating. Um, can be
And
very
you need
explainable.
those extra things. Sandy is just sharing with us, when I was a kid, if we spoke about my dead grandmother, the cardboard stopper in the glass milk bottle would pop out and fly across the room.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Some people would say it's terrifying, but
I think it just
yeah,
depends.
I
Like,
totally.
was your grandma angsty? Are you talking nice? Are you not talking nice? Do you make sure that you only talk nice when that happens? For my daughter coming to this house, she doesn't live here anymore. She's spread her wings and flown the coop after many years of university. So when she would come home from university, she had lights, like fairy lights, set up in her bedroom with no batteries in the case, and the lights would still turn on. So she would come to the door of her bedroom and she would announce those lights would turn on when she was coming home. It was like that excitement. She would stand in her doorway of her bedroom and she'd go, "I'm home for the weekend. You are not allowed to touch me. You are not allowed to use my energy. You cannot wake me up in the middle of the night." And she'd set the boundaries for what her visit was going to be like when she was at home. And those lights would just flicker when she was on her way back out the door. When she said goodbye, they would flicker and she would go back to school. But none of that stuff has
Wow.
happened since yeah, right? It's
You could
it's
almost argue that's the psychokinesis too,
I think
right?
so.
She's announcing she's coming home. The lights are going on
Exactly.
because that's her space,
Yeah.
and then her saying goodbye. Do that, perhaps.
Yeah. Agreed. Sandy's just sharing, talking about her in general and reminiscing. I'm
Did
if this
was
is with her grandmother. So if that was
was
her, no,
grandmother a prankster? Or
just
if grandma
announcing
was
that.
a prankster, like to scare you, then maybe that's like you're talking about me, like, yeah, I'm still listening, right?
Yeah.
Popping that off. Maybe she liked milk a lot. I don't know. And that was something familiar for her, and she's just saying, "Hey, I'm here. I'm still
In the
listening."
space. I've always tried to set the table on holidays with an extra place setting for family that's in spirit. So it was like
Oh wow.
a visual thing to include them and remind everybody that's here that we're honoring and celebrating those people that are no longer here with us, but here in spirit. So, the odd time we've caught some things, but again, is it that psychokinesis that we're creating that energy because we're putting that out there, or is it really them? But it feels good to me to have that visual there and to include them in those.
Well, that's great, right? Like you think that tradition goes across a lot of
Yeah.
cultures, like the Day of the Dead, like
Yeah.
Latino, like they go to the cemeteries and have parties because they believe their deceased ones come back to visit them. Like, but would that happen if they didn't encourage that? Um, who's to say, right? I love that idea of remembrance, though.
Marla's just sharing, my Maggie cat jumps off the bed. It's loud. No explanation. I know it's her. Did we miss part of a comment somewhere, Marla? Or are you connected with Sandy? Like, are we talking about, or are you talking about the cat jumping off the bed so you know that it's your cat? It's the cat in spirit? I
When she
want to
hears
make
a
sure that I
bang in
have
her
the whole
house,
story. Yeah. But animals can pick up frequencies so far outside of our house too, that sometimes the things that they're picking up aren't necessarily from picking up in the space, like when they're reacting to something.
that's a good point too. My cats always freak out when a stray tomcat comes around the front porch of my house, and they can sense it from upstairs, way away from the front of the house. Like
Cat
they
in
can
spirit.
hear that weird growling noise from the cat, and they automatically go to it. So
Yeah. And my dogs too. The dogs can pick up when other dogs are approaching well before I can even see something coming in the window. So they're already responding to something. The cat in spirit. So I, have had experiences where it feels like there's something sitting on the bed, where you can feel that depression of the mattress actually going down at the foot of the bed, where I felt that. So I know that that's possible. You're saying that you can hear that loud explanation and knowing that it's her. But I still am like, if this is you, I need you to do it again. And then I'm setting up equipment at the
yeah,
same time. And I still just still want that one or two other pieces of information that's validating what I'm having as a personal experience.
yeah, for sure. Just reading a comment Joyce put up.
Do you want me to? I can put it up for everyone. There we go.
Put it up so people
Yeah. Do you want to read it
can
out loud?
understand the silence. There's a house in Scotland outside of Brantford that the family living there reported a rocking chair would rock by itself. Seen it. Cupboard doors would open and close. Then they took a family photo with a Polaroid camera. There's a man standing beside the family. I saw the picture myself. I was going to write a story about it in high school, but when I tried to get a copy of the photo, he wasn't there. Several people tried as well. He never shows up in the copies. Sometimes I believe that spirits only show up to the people that they're meant to see it.
I agree.
They don't want their story perhaps shared. They just were there
Yeah.
in that moment. I've had experiences, personal experiences where I'm like, why did this, like it was meant for you to experience, as terrifying as they might be sometimes. There's so many chances this could have happened around other people and it didn't. It only happened for me. Well, why? Right? And I like to believe there's a reason for that, or there's an explanation for that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and my reoccurring thing is usually what I think is a warning, or a hey, you're getting too far, you're getting beyond where you should be. You need to take a step back and reevaluate. That's usually when I have my big paranormal moments.
I think respecting, and it's going back to the same places, like when you're going back to the same places to investigate, we had talked about that as well too, like they get to know you. And I think there's a comfort level, and I also think that they'll share more when you're showing that respect to them. It's, if they are intelligent and you're having an intelligent experience back and forth, it's respect both ways. We're respecting them. If they're saying that they're done, not everybody wants to have a talk all night long and be poked and prodded at and do that monkey dance. So when we're respecting them, they respect us and give us stuff back. So I don't know, respect plays a big part in all of this too.
100%. Totally agree with you.
So I know that we're coming to the end of our time. Thank you so much. It's always such a fun time having you on, and I look forward to it again. We'll do this again. Thank you
Nice.
to everybody that participated in the conversation with us today, everybody that came in and hung out with us and shared their personal stories. Thank you very much for doing that. If you are tuning in with us next week, I encourage you to join in next week. Like next week, I have Rebecca F. Pittman coming on, and we're going to be talking about the history and haunting of Lizzie Borden. She has her book out talking about Lizzie Borden, and it's fascinating. If you like paranormal, true crime, and mysteries, there's new evidence, there's photos, there's revelations in there that are new that she was able to share in this book. So it's fascinating. So you have been listening to us on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7. Thanks for being here, everybody.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Spirit Switchboard with host Kerrilynn Shellhorn on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 New Orleans. Thank you, Laura Lee. I don't know if you can still hear us.
Thank you, Laura Lee.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much. That was fun. And
No
I learned a
problem.
lot too. There was things that I didn't know, I was thinking I had wanted to reach out to you before I did that event on the 13th because there was things I wanted to understand. Yes.
Kerrilynn, just for a second. Did it end? I'm still seeing live. Up in the left-hand corner. Are you seeing live?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't end. I don't know why it didn't give